I'm going to call the July 23rd, 2026 meeting of the TRPA Hearings Officer to order. It's 2 p.m. My name is Marcia Birch, and I'll be serving as the Hearings Officer today. Next item is the approval of the agenda. Have there been any changes to the agenda?
There have not been any changes to the agenda.
All right, then I will go ahead and approve the agenda as it was posted. Item 3, public interest comments for no action. At this time, members of the public may address the hearings officer on matters within the agency's jurisdiction that are not listed as public hearing items on this agenda. If you wish to comment on a public hearing item, please do so when that item is called. The hearings officer is prohibited by law from taking immediate action on or discussing issues that are not listed on the agenda. All right, so we don't have any members of the public here. Is there anyone online?
It looks like there is one person online.
Okay, let's go ahead and see if there are any public comments.
Okay, so if any member of the public wishes to comment at this time on any item that is not on the agenda, please raise your hand now by clicking on the raise hand button at the bottom of your Zoom screen. There are no hands raised to comment.
Okay, I will close the public interest comments. Item 4 is announcement of appeal rights. Any decision of the hearings officer is appealable to the TRPA governing board. The notice of appeal, which can be found on TRPA's website, and associated fees must be filed within 21 days of the hearings officer's decision. All right, and that brings us to our public hearing items. Sorry, on my little screen here, I'm going to open the agenda. All right, no, it's fine. Okay, so the first one is Paxarel Holdings Gilad Land Capability Challenge, 5955 Ophir Street, Placer County, California, APN 116-060-040, TRPA file number LCAP 2026-0156. And I believe this is Julie Roll's item.
Yes, hi, thank you, Julie Roll, for the record. As Marcia stated, this is a land capability challenge. It was reviewed on behalf of TRPA by soils contractor Phil Scholes. And based on his evaluation, staff recommends changing the land capability from class 1C to a combination of class 1C and class 4. And we do have Phil on joining us remotely today. So I'm going to let him just kind of give some more details about what he found when he did the evaluation.
All right, thank you, Julie.
Thanks, Julie. This is a land capability challenge that's going from a class 1C. It's an area that's mapped having stony colluvial land, which is really common mapping in that general vicinity. And there's been a number of land capability challenges over the last 10, 15 years that have evaluated it and found that there's a deeper soil present, and that's what we found at this location. The consultant working with the property owner had 3 pits dug, which is probably 2 more than we actually needed, but it was really nice to have additional data. And what we found was that the soils were deep. They were quite rocky. That is common in that area. They're rocky, but there's also, a fair amount of soil between the rocks. And you can see on the screen, for example, some of the soil profile that it's got this really dark, soil surface. That's where a lot of the roots are, but those roots continue on down to the very bottom of the pit. So that's one of the important differences between the stony colluvial land and, a higher capability land, which has, deep penetration by roots, no evidence of a high water table. So in this particular situation, soil conditions matched the Tacoma Hore soil type, and for the slope class of 15 to 30%, which is what all the slopes were in the property, it matched that. There was the upper northwest corner of the property that was rock outcrops, and that remained as class 1C. So, it looks like on the diagram that, maybe an eighth of the property in that northwest corner is class 1C, and everything else had deeper soils to it, and therefore qualified for class 4 based on having slopes 15 to 30%.
Right. Thank you, Phil. So I don't have any questions. Did we receive any public comments?
No public comment.
All right, so then let's go ahead and open this up for public comment.
Okay. Any member of the public that wishes to comment on this item, please raise your hand now by clicking on the raise hand button at the bottom of your Zoom screen. There are no hands raised to comment.
Okay, then I will close public comment and I will take action and approve the proposed land capability challenge as it was presented in the staff report. All right. We are on to item 5B. This is 1041 Lakeshore LLC Shoreline Protective Structure Reconstruction, 1041 Lakeshore Boulevard, Washoe County, Nevada. Assessors parcel number 130-230-09. TRPA file number ERSP 2026-0309. And this is Brandy McMahon's item.
Yeah, thank you. You want to go to the next slide? So this is there's the existing 289-foot linear kind of retaining wall, that exists on the property on upland. They're working on, I think it's a tear down rebuild of a single family home. They are proposing to, they're proposing the removal of tops of the columns of the existing wall and leaving the base and the main retaining wall in place. And they're proposing to modify it with a rockery wall facade, landscape boulders, and native plantings around where the existing wall is. The improvements have been designed in accordance with the Best Management Practices Handbook. The sites within Shoreline Travel Unit 23 Crystal Bay, which is a non-attainment scenic area. Staff has found that the proposed native plantings and the boulders will result in scenic benefits to the unit. And then this project is within the Washoe County Tahoe Basin Area Plan Mill Creek Regulatory Zone, which is a designated scenic restoration area. Shoreline protective structures are identified as a special use in this location, which is why we're here today. And Nick Exline is the consultant representing the project, and he's available if you have any questions. I did not receive any public comment on this project.
Okay. Thank you. And the staff report was very thorough. So I don't have any questions at the moment. Nick, would you like to say anything?
I'm Nick Exline from Exline and Company for the record. Thank you for having me today. No, I think Brandy in the staff report did a great job. And so just to reiterate, the scenic benefits, in addition to the environmental benefits being achieved through this effort. As a note, similar kind of backshore revetment project I'd worked on several years ago is just to the west of this, and it's been very, very effective, both scenically and environmentally. So this, I think, is going to be a real winner project. And I'm available if there's any questions from either the public or for you.
No, I really didn't have any questions. Well, I'm curious about, there was a photograph in the staff report that showed like kind of what it will look like.
Mm-hmm.
Was that from the other projects that you worked on, or?
No, so there is, it's very similar to the other project. The other project I'm referencing is 1019, 1021, 1029 Lakeshore, which is, a handful of parcels, like I said, to the west.
Mhm.
And so what's interesting with the backshore revetment here is it doesn't, beyond very kind of extreme circumstances, doesn't really interact with water. So it gives more opportunity for how you place the rocks, planting opportunities and so forth, and compared to the ones that really are dynamic
Right.
and that the sands are being washed away. And so there's definitely going to be the augmentation of planting kind of throughout the boulders
Right.
to screen them, but also to just kind of bring like a natural aesthetic as you kind of go by from the lake. And so again, you kind of hit both of those things. You can have a good scenic element in terms of the screening of the rocks. You have the natural rocks unto themselves, and then you're holding in the soils, utilizing the roots for the veg. And so, like I was mentioned to that project, and if you go by now, seeing it from when it was installed, kind of, I want to say like early 2010s to now, it, really flourishing, really looks good. So,
Nice. So this photograph was really helpful because I was thinking more along the lines of those revetment projects that are really interacting with the lake
Right.
all the time.
Yeah.
And so this makes a lot of sense.
And
No,
yeah, there's a sandy beach, there's a pier. If you want to go to the next slide. Yeah, so it'll just be along where the existing wall is, and they'll
Okay.
install rocks and vegetation.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so I don't have any additional questions, so let's go ahead and open this up for public comment.
Okay. Any member of the public wishing to comment on this item, please raise your hand now by clicking on the raised hand button at the bottom of your Zoom screen. There are no hands raised to comment.
Okay, well then I will close public comment and I will take action and I will approve the findings contained in the staff summary as attachment A and approve the project based on the staff summary, the record evidence, and subject to the conditions contained in the draft permit. All right, so that brings us to our last agenda item, 5C. Bridget Cooley Trust demolition of a historic resource cabin and construction of a new single-family dwelling, 4940 Westlake Boulevard, Placer County, California. Assessors parcel number 097-100-034, TRPA file number ERSP 2026-0210. And this is also Brandy McMahon's project.
Thanks. Go to the next slide. Okay, so this is a boathouse garage. It's located on the west shore of Lake Tahoe. There's some conflicting information, but generally it was around since the 1920s. It's been used as a vacation home, kind of consistent with what you would see at Homewood on the west shore of Lake Tahoe. The proposal is to demolish this historic cabin and build a new single-family home per the TRPA code. In order to do that, you have to mitigate it. So they have prepared a resource recovery plan. It was prepared by a historian documenting what the cabin looks like on site. Go to the next slide. So this is the proposed new two-story home. It is Madden Creek runs through the property, and the site was previously in a flood zone, but the applicant got a letter of map amendment approved by the FEMA, or the Federal Emergency Management Agency, so it's not longer in a flood zone. They did have over 400 square feet of coverage in the stream environment zone setback. They're reducing that to 32 square feet. The site, the subject site is on Lake Tahoe, but there's a significant amount of scenic vegetation between the house and Lake Tahoe. So their report shows that only 14 square feet of the new house will be visible from the lake. This property and the adjacent property are in a project area for scenic analysis and coverage. They're not proposing any improvements or changes to the adjacent property, which has the historic main house. They are proposing on this property to install best management practices and pave the driveways because they're currently dirt driveways. And just wondering, is there anything else? I think that's it for this project. And then Wyatt Ogilvy is the consultant. I don't know if he's online or Tony's online.
He is online, live on.
Okay, so I don't have any questions at the moment. Did we receive any public comment?
Oh, we did not receive any public comment.
Okay, so let's go ahead and hear from the representatives for the applicant.
Good afternoon, Wyatt Ogilvy, in representation of the applicant. And yeah, we've reviewed the staff summary that Brandy prepared, the findings and conditions of approval, and we don't have any comments at this time. Just thanks to her for getting us here, but happy to address any comments that you may have, Marcia, or respond to public comment should there be any.
Thank you. I don't have any questions for you at the moment. You know, I spoke with Brandy about this, that again, the staff report is very thorough. It looks like there's some environmental benefit that's going to come from getting out of the SCZ a bit. Do we have any public comments? Let's go ahead and see if anyone would like to comment.
Any member of the public wishing to comment on this item, please raise your hand now by clicking on the raised hand button at the bottom of your Zoom screen. There are no hands raised to comment on this item.
Okay. All right. Well, then I will close public comment. And again, I don't have any additional questions. I feel like everything that I was concerned about was addressed in the staff report. So I will take action and approve the findings contained in the staff summary as attachment A, and I will approve the project based on the staff summary, the record evidence, and subject to the conditions contained in the draft permit. All right. Thank you, everyone. We're adjourned.
Thank you.